Story 1. My best friend. After an argument with a kid from our school in a store, we began walking away down the street. Kid. Where are you going, pussy? Friend. Your mom's house. Kid. My mom lives the other way, idiot. Friend. No, I meant your real mom. Story 2. Air traffic control is doing a poor job of vectoring an Airbus A330 in for landing. Pilot. You have left us too high. I do not think we can make the approach. Air traffic control. You have speed brakes on that aircraft, do you not? Pilot. After a noticeable pause. Yes, but those are for my mistakes, not yours. Story 3. A friend and I were in high school on our way to a track meet. He was staring at a really nice car in the parking lot. When a jerk saw him, he said, "Why bother looking at that when you know you will never be able to get one?" My friend replied, "The same reason you watch porn." The entire bus erupted, and it is still one of the funniest things I have ever heard. Story 4. A guy in my class confronted an acquaintance of mine, saying people were talking behind his back. That was not the case, as far as I know, and he replied, "Well, you know what they say about you? Nothing. Nobody cares." Story 5. Two girls were fighting, and one of them looked at my sister, who was minding her own business, and said, "You go to hell too." My sister replied, "Do you want me to say anything to your mom?" Story 6. It's got to be the Aliens locker room scene for me. Hudson. Hey Vasquez, have you ever been mistaken for a man? Vasquez. No, have you? Edit. I mistook the film title. Story 7. English class in middle school. Kid A. Yo. Kid B. Your mom waited on me at McDonald's last night. Must feel awful having a mom who works there. Kid B. At least my mom gets out of bed to go to work. The English teacher, much louder than he realized, said, "Damn." The rest of us laughed so hard the teacher next door popped her head in to see what was happening. Story 8. Context. John Oliver from Home Box Office interviews Stephen Hawking. May he rest in peace. John Oliver. And there may be a universe where I am more intelligent than you? Stephen Hawking. There may even be a universe where you are funny. Story 9. As the school bus driver, I overheard a 5th grade student belittling a 1st grade student. When it was time for a comeback, the 1st grade student shouted, "Congratulations!" The bewildered 5th grader had nothing to say and went to sit with her friends in the back of the bus. Story 10. Joe Pine. I guess your long hair makes you a woman. Frank Zappa. I guess your wooden leg makes you a table. Story 11. Many years ago, when we were about 18, a friend of mine was arguing with another person we knew. The other person was trying to act tough and intimidate my friend and said, "My feet are registered," without missing a beat. My friend replied, "Where? Health and sanitation." 40 years later, I still crack up when I think of it. Story 12. A man teases his bald friend by rubbing his head and saying, "Wow, your head is as smooth as my wife's bottom." The friend rubs his head and replies, "Wow, you're right." Story 13. I asked my mother why she always wears makeup despite being in her 40s. She told me she wears makeup so she does not look like me. I was 9 years old. Story 14. Someone yelled out in a Walmart, "I'm not ashamed of who I am." Another voice echoed back, "That's your parents' job." Story 15. I used to work with a 70-year-old woman who was our supervisor. One day, a coworker told her to kiss her ass. The supervisor replied that she did not know where to start and said the coworker was so fat her crack went all the way up her back. Story 16. During World War I, Switzerland had a small standing army, but its soldiers were highly skilled marksmen. Wilhelm II of Germany asked what 250,000 Swiss troops would do if he decided to invade with 500,000 German troops. The Swiss replied, "Shoot twice, then go home." Story 17. David Letterman. I'm not as dumb as I look. Tina Fey, how could you be? Story 18. 18th century British radical politician John Wilkes was told in Parliament by a political opponent, "Sir, I do not know whether you will die on the gallows or of the pox." Wilkes shot back, "That depends, my lord, on whether I embrace your lordship's principles or your mistress. Story 19. The husband asks, if you weren't so stupid, what would you be? The wife replies without even skipping a beat. Single. Story 20. I was the one insulted, not the one with the comeback. I was out with a coworker and her friends. My buddy and I were leaving a little too early for her sensibilities. She jokingly got up in my face and said, "Smell that? Smells like pussy." A guy playing at the pool table next to us stepped forward and said, "I'm sorry. That must be me. I just ate. It was amazing." Story 21. It was a great comeback. Not an insult, but an expression of annoyance. I was a camp counselor for a few years at a summer camp. One day my group hiked to a large rock where we had lunch. My campers were between 8 and 10 years old. One boy, whom we will call Jeff, kept poking another boy, whom we will call Matt, saying, "Look at this hole in the rock. It's so cool. It's like 6 inches deep." Matt was clearly getting annoyed while trying to eat his lunch. Jeff kept shoving sticks into the hole and trying to get everyone to look at it. Finally, Matt put down his sandwich, looked at Jeff, and said something shockingly inappropriate. I tried to be stern with him, but I kept cracking up. It was just so disproportionately ridiculous to hear that from a 9-year-old. Story 22. My grandmother got into a fight at the grocery store with a man who told my 9-year-old brother to move the fuck out of the way. They continued arguing, and his final words were, "Suck my dick, bitch." She shouted across the store, "If I could find it, bitch." Not Walmart. It was Aldi, which stands for Albrecht Discount. Story 23. Chelsea Handler told Russell Brand that the way he was looking at her made her want to cover her vagina. He replied that if he had a rubber glove, he would do it for her. The crowd burst into laughter, and she acknowledged that it was good. Story 24. My grandparents used to bicker. My grandmother usually came out on top because she was fierier. One time she asked him to do a bunch of things, and he muttered, "If you lost some weight, you could do it yourself." She fixed her gaze on him and glowered, "I'm thinking of getting rid of about 200 pounds of useless fat immediately." He replied, "You were going to cut off your foot?" Story 25. On a construction site one afternoon, different trades were working in the same area. Like childish team sports, the electricians always hung with the electricians and the plumbers always hung with the plumbers. And when they were together, it turned into a pointless contest of one-upmanship. One particularly childish exchange saw two men trading insults about who had the bigger member. Finally, one of them said this classic line, "I have girth like a can of corn." The comeback was unforgettable. "But you have length like a can of tuna." Everyone burst out laughing. Mr. Girth tried to hide his embarrassment but had no comeback. A room full of men laughed uncontrollably. Good times. Story 26. What are you looking at? I'm still trying to find out. Story 27. I saw a clip of a stand-up comedian the other day. He said something like, "The first time I had sex it was terrible. The first time I had sex." A woman chimed in, "You mean yesterday?" The crowd laughed for a while, and while the comedian waited for them to calm down, you could see the gears turn in his head. Once the laughter dwindled to a few chuckles, he said, "Glad you remember." The crowd lost their minds. It was amazing. Story 28. A friend of mine was being scolded by two identical twins in a class I once attended. He replied with a troubling look and said, "If you two are identical, how come only one of you is attractive?" He played the long game. The two girls looked perplexed for the rest of the session. Story 29. I expected a better insult from someone of your upbringing and education. Story 30. Glenn McGrath, Australian cricketer, got frustrated with Edo Brandis when every attempt to stump him failed. This is what happened next. McGrath asked, "Why are you so fat?" Brandis replied, "Because every time I sleep with your wife, she gives me a biscuit." Story 31. On an Indian roast show, there were two bald twin brothers, and the roaster told them they confused him on a biological level, that they looked like testicles and that they were both assholes. I am still waiting for an opportunity to use it. Story 32. Not heard but written. This is the Spartans' reply to Philip II of Macedon. As Philip II of Macedon conquered Greek city-states, Sparta remained isolated. Philip had won a crushing victory, and Sparta was relatively weak and without walls. He sent a message to the Spartans: "If I invade Laconia, you will be destroyed, never to rise again." The Spartans replied with one word: if. Story 33. One of my coworkers was cold calling customers to get appointments and drum up business. One customer told him to go fuck his hand. He replied that he had that penciled in for 3 and should be done by 4, and asked if the customer would like to come in then. The customer laughed and came to the appointment. Story 34. I was joking with a couple of buddies and may have suggested that I slept with one of their mothers. A friend replied, "My mother is dead." My mouth bypassed my brain and I replied, "That explains the dirt." Story 35. This happened about 5 years ago. There was an annoying kid in my high school math class who was loud and ignored the teacher. He was mixed race. I mention that because it is relevant. He was talking loudly with the student next to him. The teacher told him, "Shut the hell up." The kid said he was half black and claimed that being mean to him was racist. The teacher looked him dead in the eyes and said, "I was talking to your white half, stupid." Hands down my favorite teacher. Story 36. I said, "We should learn from our mistakes." My friend replied, "So that's why you have a younger sister?" Story 37. Dude bragging, "I have a large penis." Friend, what happened? Did someone break one off in your ass? Story 38. My grandma asked my cousin, who had many partners and 2 children at that point, if she was ever going to get married. Cousin, it is not the same nowadays. We do not buy cars without test driving them first. Grandma, yes, but they do not let you put 100,000 miles on them either. Point goes to grandma. Story 39. I have many stories, but one of the most memorable was in 8th grade. For context, I did not make the basketball team in 7th grade, but I made the team in 8th grade. A boy who had been on the team the previous year but did not make it that year was very upset and told me I was bad. I asked him if he was better than me, why had he not made the team? He said it was just because of his grades. I replied, "Oh, so you were just stupid then?" He gave up because he had to either accept that he was not as good or accept that he was an idiot. Story 40. The classic, "You're adopted. At least my parents chose to have me." Story 41. I was 14 or 15 and had a quiet, nerdy friend with really bad acne. My older brother had 3 friends, all brothers 2, 3, and 4 years older than me and my friend. They were all gangster and started their own gang, which I always thought was really funny. My friend and I walked in the front door. My brother and his friends were sitting at the television playing Halo. One of the brothers looked at my friend and said, "Holy shit, Sam, I got 2 words for you, acne pads." Sam replied, "Cool. And I got 2 words for you, Johnny. Speech therapy." The guy had a pretty bad stutter. He jumped right up and started trying to fight my friend. As long as I can remember after that, he wanted to fight Sam, but we just ignored them. I do not know why this stuck with me for so long. It was such a perfect delivery and shutdown of a bully. Edit. Unrelated, but another funny story about these 3 brothers. They were walking through my backyard after playing basketball in the mid-afternoon. I heard Johnny screaming, "Oh, run!" And the oldest brother, who was about 5'1", came running up my driveway wearing his oversized jean shorts and a Jordan jersey. He was trying to get away from a bat that had bitten him several times in the face and head. He ended up getting about 16 shots in his stomach because the bat probably had rabies. They were an odd bunch of guys who tried way too hard to live the gangster life but were not very good at it. Story 42. Son. Dad. You don't know how to make a joke. Dad. I made you. Story 43. Come on. Stop telling me how to live my life. It's not like I come down to the docks at night, knocking the sailors' cocks out of your mouth. Story 44. In class, a student used the F slur against another student. He replied that he was probably as straight as the pole your mom dances on. Story 45. I can't remember the best one I heard, but I can remember the best comeback I ever made. It is also the only good comeback I ever made. I was in 7th grade and we were in the locker room after gym. People were discussing shoe sizes because one kid had enormous feet. I don't know if my feet are small, but mine were the smallest. They said, "Small feet, you know what that means?" I didn't mind too much, but one kid crossed the line. He said, "Don't worry, fella. There are like 10 different ways to make it bigger." So I said, "Have you tried all 10? Not very impressive, but it shut him up. Story 46. Anything I have thought of more than an hour after the insult. Story 47. I work at a hotel. A few years ago, a guest got into a spat with our security officer over something. When she wasn't getting her way, she told him he was full of shit. Our security officer replied immediately, "No, I'm not. I took care of that this morning. But thank you for your concern for my good health and regularity." I was about to burst out laughing, so I excused myself to the back office. As I was leaving, I heard him continue, deadpan, "But I promise, I eat a healthy diet full of fiber. It warms my heart to know you're concerned about me having regular bowel movements. So the next time I'm constipated, I will know you're thinking of me." He kept that up in the same deadpan, which made the woman angrier while I laughed so hard I nearly cried. After that, she did not cause any more problems the rest of the night. Story 48. You know those people who tell you to be yourself? Do not listen to them. He has come up with more creative insults, but this is the most memorable. Story 49. How appropriate. You fight like a cow. Edited. Thank you for the gold. Story 50. That's what she said. But she didn't say it to you. Story 51. In high school, I was in the orchestra. We went on several large national trips each year. One year, a group of upperclassmen were caught with marijuana in their hotel room. Everyone except one guy was suspended and prohibited from attending future trips. The one guy who wasn't in trouble had apparently hidden in the shower and played dumb, and they believed him. A week later, the entire orchestra was practicing with the teaching assistant when our conductor entered the practice room and, in front of all 114 members, said, "Jason, all your friends ratted you out. They're mad. I'm mad. You played me like a fiddle." "That's what I play," Jason replied, raising his violin. Story 52. I went to Catholic school. The teacher said, "There's a special place in hell for people like you." I replied, "See you there." Story 53. You know that biceps come in men's sizes, right? "Oh, I think you attract enough men as it is." Story 54. 1. Back in the day, being openly gay could be downright dangerous, but George didn't really care. Someone called him a queen, and he responded, "I'll have you know my mother is still alive, which makes me a princess." 2. Once I worked with a Karen, who was actually named Karen. In addition to being a bitch on wheels, she was morbidly obese. One day I was on the phone with one of our clients who, in the course of the conversation, complained about her. I took the complaint to our team lead. She said, "Yeah, I get a lot of complaints about her. But she says the clients don't like her because she's heavy." Before I could stop myself, I shot back, "But Joe, if I were blind, I'd still think she's a bitch." Story 55. Stalking, longing, steer, stupendous, makeshift, shocking, afterthought, governor, meeting, sloppy. Story 56. In middle school, a boy asked when I was going to grow some boobs. I asked him when he would be donating his. I am still proud of that. I did not expect this to get attention, but I remember it clearly. He was walking out of English as I was walking in. We met at the doorway chest to chest. He looked me in the eye and said, "Grow some tits." Without missing a beat, I replied deadpan, "Donate yours." I walked to my desk with a big smile. Later I did grow some boobs. They are small, but they are nice. Story 57. The greatest comeback I witnessed was when Kumail Nanjiani was on Mean Tweets. Someone asked, "Is your dick multiple colors?" He replied, "Yes, every shade of your mom's lipstick." Story 58. I overheard some children bickering on the train. A little boy, about 6 or 7, said to a younger girl, about 4, "You can't even read." She replied, "Oh yeah? At least I don't eat my boogers." Story 59. An older man I used to work with was overweight. He had a large belly that hung past his belt. A skinny coworker constantly made fun of him, even touching his belly and saying things like, "When are you expecting?" Finally, one day the older man had enough. The skinny man said, "Damn, your belly is so big." The older man replied, "It's because your wife likes performing oral sex in the shade." Story 60. I was 13 years old. I was carrying a bunch of books for the teacher when someone thought it would be funny to pretend to fall right in front of me. I said, "Don't fall for me, man." My whole book-carrying crew and his prank crew burst into laughter. I did not register what had happened until much later. Story 61. Probably Dylan's last phrase of Positively 4th Street. I wish that for just one time you could stand inside my shoes. And just for that one moment I could be you. You would know what a drag it is to see you. Story 62. It was an exchange between two coworkers a few years ago. A case of slut-shaming gone wrong. Person A had only ever slept with one person, their previous boyfriend, whom they were still obsessed with. Person B was the opposite and slept with a different person every week. Person A: I can't believe how many people you've slept with. I don't understand how people can have sex with someone they aren't in love with. Person B: Well, your ex-boyfriend seemed to manage it okay. Person A falls silent. He dies inside. Edit. Yes, he had an ex-boyfriend. Person A was a gay man. It's not a typo. It's 2020. Story 63. I have a twin brother. I'm older. He once told me that when I came out they knew it was a mistake and immediately tried again. I told him he was the buy one, get one of equal or lesser value free. There was a fight after that. Story 64. I was out with a friend who was wearing a silly outfit. Someone came up and said, "Why are you wearing that? It's not Halloween." He replied, "Then why don't you take off that hideous mask?" Story 65. An Arab poet met a man on the street. Trying to belittle him, the man said, "I saw you from afar and thought you were a woman." The poet replied, "I saw you from afar and thought you were a man." Story 66. In high school, we congregated in our cliques around the benches. One friend cracked his knuckles. He did so fairly often. Another friend saw this and remarked, "You pop your hands a lot. You must jerk off a lot." The friend who popped his hands immediately looked at him and calmly replied, "You pop your jaw a lot. You must suck dick a lot." Weirdly, no one laughed. We all shrugged and accepted it as a logical explanation. It's been over 20 years and I still think about the logic. Wow, look at those numbers. Thanks, internet family. As for the comments about changing cliques to cliques for the sake of the story, I think I'll leave it as is. Story 67. Winston Churchill, of course. Lady Nancy asked her, "Winston, if you were my husband, I would poison your tea." Winston Churchill: "Nancy, if I were your husband, I would drink it." Story 68. Once, a woman tried to provoke my dad in a parking lot. He replied in a monotone voice, "Why don't you act your age and die?" Story 69. Is it cheating to use one of my own? I work in construction, and a lot of the guys are exactly what you would expect. One of them was particularly loud on this job. He would always talk about drinking, how much he drank, and the consequences. He even said he has never sold a car. He wrecks them, usually while drunk driving. I had recently purchased a house, and another guy asked me about it. The loud guy heard and said, "What the fuck? I am a journeyman and all I can afford is a basement suite in Langford, which is far away and considered suboptimal. You are just an apprentice. How can you afford a house?" I replied, "I do not have any drinking stories." Story 70. Between two ferns with Obama. Zach: "It must kind of stink that you can't run 3 times. Obama: "No. Actually, I think it's a good idea. If I ran a 3rd time, it would be kind of like doing a third The Hangover movie. That did not really work out very well, did it?" Story 71. I was getting a lift from my boss when there was a bit of a road rage incident. A driver pulled out in front of us, and my boss had to brake. He honked the horn. The driver leaned out the window and called my boss, who was a bit chunky, a fat bastard. My boss shouted, "I'm only fat because every time I fuck your mother, she bakes me a cake." The driver went red-faced and started shouting as my boss accelerated away, leaving him fuming. Story 72. I was in Target when two kids and their mom walked past. One kid was singing. The other kid said, "Those aren't even the right words." The singing kid responded without missing a beat, "Yeah, well, this is the remix." Story 73. I knew a girl in high school who was adopted. She was pretty chill and open about it for the most part. One day in math class, another student cracked a joke about her being adopted, and without a moment's hesitation she shot back, "Well, at least my parents wanted me." It was the best comeback I've ever heard. Story 74. Your dick is the size of a Tic Tac. No wonder your mom has good breath every day. Story 75. When your ex calls you stupid, you respond that you are proof of that. Story 76. A short man at a bar was talking shit to my friend. He said, "I'm going to be the bigger man and walk away." My friend replied, "You will never be the bigger man." Story 77. May you live in interesting times. I did not get this one until the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic happened. Story 78. My boyfriend and I were walking together when someone came up and said, "Why are you always together? What are you, gay?" My boyfriend replied, "Why are you interested?" Story 79. When I was in high school, I had an ancient history class with a teacher named Mr. O'Neill. He was well-educated and well-spoken, though quiet, a younger man, a bit chubby with curly blonde hair, and he liked wearing bow ties. In that same class was a student named Jake, one of those kids who always acted like a smartass to every teacher to try to get a laugh. He was so annoying that another teacher actually threw a stapler in his direction. One day Mr. O'Neill was having trouble reaching the string to pull down the screen for the projector. He would make little jumps and swat at the string but just barely could not get it. Jake noticed and saw an opportunity, so he yelled, "What's the matter, Mr. O'Neill? Can't reach?" He and his buddies chuckled in the corner. Mr. O'Neill replied, "No, Jake, I'm just getting my morning exercise." Then he bent over and touched his toes. It was not the most clever comeback, but coming from someone like Mr. O'Neill, it was hilarious. More importantly, it shut Jake up, and most of the class laughed at him. Mr. O'Neill became something of a hero for shutting down one of the annoying smartest students who always disrupted class. Story 80. I told a buddy years ago, "Fuck you." He replied, "No, fuck yourself. It's twice the pussy." Story 81. You were talking a lot of shit for a dude in cumshot distance. Story 82. At work one night my crew was cleaning up trash in the middle of the interstate inside a lane closure. We got up to where another crew was working on machines. Those guys acted like they were a gift from God to construction. I said, "Can you all move over for a second so we can get by?" One of them said to his crew, "Come on, guys. Let us get out of this little lady's way so she can pick up our trash." He said to me, "You all are slower than hell, and look, you even missed some." I replied, "Oh, I am sorry. I do not think I can fit you in this bag. I will come back after I open a new one and maybe we can squeeze you in there." Story 83. Arguing with my mom for the millionth time, she would always say, "You're just like your father." One day I got tired of it and told her, "I'm not like my father. I'm smarter than him." She said, "Oh yeah? And why is that?" I replied, "Because I had a girlfriend like you and I broke up with her. She didn't speak to me for a couple of days." Story 84. There are approximately 1,010,300 words in the English language, but I could never string enough words together to properly express how much I want to hit you with a chair. Attributed to Alexander Hamilton speaking to Thomas Jefferson. Edit. Apparently this did not actually happen. Story 85. I am sure I have heard better retorts, but this is one I vividly remember. When I was about 12, I stopped doing my homework. My parents were frustrated because I had been a good student. My mother, also angry with my father, exploded on me like never before. "You son of a bitch!" I replied, "Well, what does that make you?" I locked myself in my room for hours. Story 86. A good old bit of cricket sledging aimed at an incoming batsman. Bowler says, "Hey, how is your wife and my children?" Batsman replies, "The wife is fine. The children are disabled." Story 87. I was at a friend's house and his drunk parents were fighting. Nothing new. Mom yelled loud enough for me, my friend, and his little brother to hear. "Oh, big tough man, why don't you go tell those boys why you can't even get it up?" Dad replied, "They already know why, and if you go look in the mirror you'll know why too." We laughed so hard that she kicked us out of the house. Story 88. Person A. Fuck you, buddy. Person B. I bet you would if I had tits on my back. Story 89. A kid in my class with big ears called me a fairy. Being the fantasy enthusiast I am, I snapped back and called him an elf. He smacked my head against a brick wall for that, but I shrugged it off. Story 90. Timur, emperor of the Timurid Empire, sent a chest full of horse manure to Ottoman Sultan Bayezid. The Sultan sent back a chest full of sweets and delights with a note that said, "Everybody gives what they eat." Story 91. Mr. Faraday, your demonstration is very interesting. But what purpose does demonstrating that electricity and magnetism are related serve? I'm not sure, sir, but no doubt one day you'll find a way to tax it. Alleged interaction between a politician and Michael Faraday, who discovered and demonstrated the link between electricity and magnetism and, consequently, the electric motor, forming the basis for the power stations we use every day. Story 92. My girlfriend was walking down the street while two guys were sitting on a bench. One of them called after her, saying, "Oh, how I would love to lick your pussy." My girlfriend turned around and said, "Why, you can't fuck?" The guy replied, "Oh yes, I can." My girlfriend said, "Then go fuck your mother." I know it sounds bad, but in that moment I found it epic. Story 93. I don't often brag, but I'm proud of this one. A woman in a motorized cart was parked across the entire aisle at Walmart. After watching her do nothing for about 30 seconds, I got annoyed and squeezed past. She finally showed the first sign of awareness I had seen so far and called out, "Patience is a virtue." Without skipping a beat, I replied, "And sloth is a vice." For the record, she clearly wasn't actually handicapped. She was just, what's the next step above morbidly obese but not quite bedridden yet? Story 94. I call you a cunt, but I assume you lack the depth and the warmth. Story 95. Being a lesbian, I often hear that I never had a real man. Someone stood up for me, well, no one around here. Story 96. Aren't you a little young to be building a roller coaster? Yes, I am. Fair enough. Story 97. Not a comeback in the strict sense, but it was the best shutdown I've seen, and the fact that it was my high school-age daughter made it even better. A princess-type mean girl came up and commented on my daughter's punked-out style. My daughter looked her in the eye, slowly looked her up and down, then smirked, cocked an eyebrow and walked away. The girl froze, as if it had never occurred to her that someone of lower status could choose not to give a rat's ass about what she had to say. Story 98. A French manager and a Karen were arguing. Karen, customers are kings. Manager, you are in France. Here we decapitate kings. Story 99. I used to work with an older man. He once asked me, "Where were you when I was in my prime?" My reply was, "Kindergarten." That shut him down quickly. Story 100. Jim Norton. Well, I was diagnosed with adorable huggable boy disorder. That's difficult. Anthony Cumia. What's that? Jim Norton. Adorable huggable boy disorder. Anthony Cumia. Ah, I see you're cured. Story 101. I said this to my mom. I was on the toilet about 5 minutes before we left for a doctor's appointment. I really had to poop. She called my name and asked, "Where are you?" I told her where I was. She said, "Well, get moving and come on." I replied, "Where do you think the poop comes from?" Story 102. Marilyn Monroe once had someone tell her, "The only reason you look so beautiful is your expensive clothes." The next day she posed for a photo shoot wearing nothing but a potato sack. I plan to get that as a tattoo. Story 103. My brother was in a history class that had attracted the most disruptive and least attentive students. They would constantly interrupt and make the class miserable, and the teacher did not do anything about it. One day, a girl who had caused many problems acted up as usual to derail the lesson, and he had enough. He turned to her and told her to be quiet, and she flipped out. The teacher warned her to be careful what she said to him, because she might be working for him one day. My brother turned to the teacher and said, "No, I do not plan on being a pimp." The class erupted in laughter. The teacher had to step out because she was laughing, and that girl did not bother my brother for the rest of the year. Story 104. On the Graham Norton show, Mark Ruffalo and Josh Widdicombe were discussing their fears. Josh was about to share his when Mark interrupted and said that Josh is afraid of girls over 12. Story 105. If you want my comeback, you will have to scrape it off the teeth of your mother. Story 106. You did nothing down there. That was all me. Bro, I cleaned up all those boxes. What boxes? Exactly. Story 107. My best friend and I were arguing on the bus, and she said that the United States would invade my forehead for the oil on it. Damn, girl. Story 108. At a party, there was a shitty guy who was always trying to start fights. He picked on a quiet man and told him, "I think you're a pussy." The man calmly replied, "I don't think about you at all." Story 109. My brother got a terrible haircut at Supercuts. He didn't know it was a place for trainee barbers. They basically shaved his head, and he was very angry. The next day at work, while on break in front of everyone, our boss said to my brother, "So you're trying to copy your videos and got cancer, huh?" My brother makes edgy, gay, dark comedy skits. Our boss is 5 feet 4 inches tall, very short. My brother immediately snapped back, "Yeah, well, at least I can ride all the rides at Six Flags." We all died laughing. Fun bonus story. Later that night, the boss, who was pretty cool, tried to say something again, which I don't remember. I just remember what my brother said, which was, "Just because I can reach the cookies on the top of the fridge doesn't mean you have to be crying all night." Pretty good, but not as funny as the first one, in my opinion. Story 110. Not that I have heard, but I have done it myself. My sister said the classic phrase, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." What did my literal autistic self do? I grabbed a dictionary and threw it at her. Story 111. I cracked a joke to my 11-year-old nephew. His response was, "I would roast you, but my mom taught me not to burn trash." It left me completely speechless. I did not have a comeback for that. Laughing out loud. Kudos to the little man. Story 112. The scene, a bar. The players, my mate and a woman. At the time, my mate sported an admittedly questionable goatee about 6 inches long and braided. He was enjoying his pint when the woman, apropos of nothing, turned around, tugged gently on his goatee and said, "Aren't you brave going out with that?" My mate smiled, reached over, gently pinched an exposed fold of her muffin top. She was overweight and rather scantily clad, and replied, "And aren't you brave going out with that?" Story 113. A few years ago, we were at a parent-teacher conference with our 6-year-old daughter. We had concerns about her being bullied by another girl in class. The teacher told her the classic saying, "Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words can never hurt you." My daughter replied that words actually hurt her very much. The teacher answered, "Well, you need to grow thicker skin than that." My daughter ended the conversation with a very gentle and concerning question. "Is that why your skin is so thin and scrunched? Because people said mean words to you and you couldn't grow anymore?" Story 114. In Aliens, a large bully soldier asks a lesbian soldier whether she has ever mistakenly been taken for a man. In response, she says, "No. Have you?" Story 115. The idea I come up with an hour later when I am alone in the shower. Story 116. Guy 1. Go fuck yourself. Guy 2. Fuck yourself, you coward. Story 117. An acquaintance of mine had his wife taken by his best friend after a long secret affair. A few months after she left one man for the other, The two men met face to face at a family gathering. My friend said to his ex-best friend, "How is that relationship working out for you?" The ex-best friend replied, "It's not bad once you get past the fact that she was with you before." To me, that is one of the greatest responses of all time. Story 118. Coworker. Ooh, look at me. I'm Cotterman 21. I never make mistakes. Me. I wish your parents could say the same about you. Coworker. Stares deep into my soul with nothing to say. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.